And the story that we're going to talk about today with John Wells is really staggering. John, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Well, John, let me ask you this. Now, some of our listeners and those who are watching online have heard this story before. We have reported it. Master Sergeant Nathan Summers, a 25-year Army veteran and a conservative Christian, and it's the latter part of that description that has gotten him in hot water. Why don't you tell our listeners what has been happening to Master Sergeant Summers?
Well, it all started back before the election, and he had, as he's allowed to do under the DoD regulations, he had a bumper sticker that said "No Obama" and a couple other things supporting the Republican candidate. He immediately got hassled for this, and including a formal counseling statement, which they threatened to prosecute him under the Hatch Act, which you can't do. The Hatch Act does not apply to military personnel. And plus, like I said, he conformed with the regulations. So they got me involved, and we got that supposedly taken care of. Then he was backstage reading, and let me explain, he's a vocalist with the Army band. So, they spend a lot of time on the bus and waiting backstage to go on, and so on and so forth. So everybody brings reading material. His choice happened to go to David Limbaugh, Mark Levin, and Sean Hannity. And he was reprimanded for that. Said, you can't do that. That's divisive. Okay. Okay. So he stopped doing that. Then he got promoted to Master Sergeant, and this was in August of last year. So he, by tradition, they throw a promotion party, and of course this is, in the middle of the hassle with DOMA and Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal and so on and so forth. So he tweets in honor of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And the refusal to enforce DOMA, I'm going to serve Chick-fil-A at my promotion party, which he did. And boy, that just really got them all upset. So they started an investigation. I sent a letter to the colonel basically saying, hey, we're going to ask for redress under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which we have a right to do. And they backed down on that. There was an investigation, which supposedly he was not a party to. They made him a party to it. We stopped that. The investigation went nowhere. But then it came time to do his annual evaluation. And this annual evaluation is a report that's reviewed up at the Department of Army headquarters, and it's a basis for any promotion or any special assignments. And they just torpedoed him on it. We objected to that, and that's still objecting. So what they then did was set him a little trap and took him before the commander in what's called an Article 15, or non-judicial punishment. What they did was they accused him of being away without leave, or AWOL, on a day which he was there. We proved he was there. They accused him of making a false official statement because he got a date wrong in an email he had sent his command sergeant major, and then they accused him of failing to disobey an order because they had asked for certain health records that would include his son's health records. He says, and he came to me. I said, they can't do that. Tell them that you need, pursuant to the law, a HIPAA-compliant Privacy Act statement because you have to protect your son's privacy. And if he doesn't do that, he can get in trouble. So they took him to this Article 15. It was a kangaroo court, and basically found him guilty and gave him an oral reprimand. Now, the problem with all this is it sets in motion a process called the Quality Review Board. What they're trying to do is get him to the Quality Review Board that will force him to retire. Okay, he will be able to retire. I mean, there's no question of that. But because he only has, at this point in time, 1 year as a master sergeant, it'll force him to retire as a sergeant first class, which is 1 grade later, or 1 grade less. At that point, what they can do is hold up this example to everybody and say, see what we did to Summers? You all better toe the line. You all better just sit there and forget Chick-fil-A and, fly the rainbow flag, because that's what's going to be. And that's kind of the story in a nutshell. We're in a process of, appealing all this and fighting it, and I would anticipate that before too much longer, we're going to have a federal court suit going under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, because this is just out-and-out religious persecution. And Tim and Ed, the worst part about it, this is the tip of the iceberg. I'm sorry to keep dominating the conversation here, but, I've got other cases that are coming up. I've got a guy who sent an email to who he thought was a chaplain at West Point saying, gosh, I don't think it's right to use the chapel for homosexual marriages. They're persecuting him. I've got a couple of chaplains that were involved in the VA program that were thrown out of the course because they quoted scriptures. I mean, it's getting bad out there.
So chaplains, this is when I introduced this story and said this is staggering. This has happened so quickly. The repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell didn't happen all that long ago, and so it sounds like, and you tell me if I'm over exaggerating, it sounds like there is underway in the U.S. military a witch hunt against Christians, and not just all Christians, but particularly those Christians who hold to the biblical beliefs about homosexuality, and conservative Christians who have a political view that is different than the current administration. Do you think it is fair to say that there is a witch hunt underway, or do you think these are simply a handful of isolated cases?
Oh, I think you're understating the problem. It's beyond a witch hunt now. And it's not just against conservative Christians. It's against Catholics. It's against more moderate religions. It's against Jews. It's against anybody who upholds and believes in the Bible. And it's also against white males. It's against the so-called warrior culture. It's against anybody who espouses conservative beliefs. What is happening is the liberal left-wingers, which have taken over our executive branch, and I include the Secretary of Defense in that, are gutting the United States Armed Forces. They see that as a bastion of conservatism. They're gutting it. They're forcing people to either get with the program or get out, and they really prefer they get out, so that in the end, what you're going to have is this left-wing liberal, I can't think of the right words, hoity-toity, I guess, military, that wouldn't be capable of beating the Netherlands. Okay, and that's what we're going to. They're ripping the core out of the United States Armed Forces, the best military that this world has ever seen.
So this is more, I said witch hunt. And by the way, we're talking to Attorney John Wells, who is representing Master Sergeant Nathan Summers, as well as apparently some others in the military. So this is not a witch hunt. This sounds like a purge. This sounds like something that happened under Stalin when he purged his military of all those who didn't see eye to eye with him. So this is a purge of Christians and other conservative religious people and political conservatives. And so the military that we have always been proud of, and which has been a love America first and, you said, a bastion of conservatism, this is a purge that is underway by a secular left-wing and, in my opinion, radical administration and his minions.
Exactly. And, it's more than just looking for witches. It's they're going to tar anybody that they don't like as a witch, okay? And, burning at the stake is too good for them. But, it's really hard to describe. Now, when I was in the military, I spent 22 years in. I was not a JAG, okay? This is my second career. I was a regular line officer. I spent 10 years at sea. I know what the military is like, what the warrior culture is like. And, and I use the term conservatism as a bastion of conservatism. I probably should have said a bastion of patriotism, because these are folks that are willing to go out, put their life on the line, put the country first, okay? That's not what this movement wants. What this movement wants is a bunch of politically correct, namby-pamby types that are going to sit there and say, oh, we got attacked, I guess we did something wrong, type of thing. And that's what it's coming to. That's the goal. And the military of today is nothing like the military that I served in the 70s, the 80s, and the beginning of the 90s. And it's quickly becoming a shadow of its former self. It is religious persecution. There's no question of that. but it's also a national security issue.
Talking to John Wells, Tim Wildman here with Ed Vitagliano. We're talking about what's happening in the military with respect to religious freedom and Christians. And you're saying where's this coming from, John? Is it coming from the Pentagon, from the top down? Where is it coming from?
Well, I think it's coming from the White House.
From the White House, okay.
The day they nominated Chuck Hagel to be the Secretary of Defense, I think was the day that, it sounded the death knell for the U.S. military. I mean, he's always been very liberal, very anti-military, very anti, for lack of a better term, the warrior culture. He's just been he's a disaster. He's going to continue to be a disaster.
Okay, how do you really feel, John? You could express hey, what if...
Well, in 1982, he did a very good thing. He resigned in protest as Deputy Secretary of the VA because there's question about the Agent Orange issues, but that's the last time I saw him do a good thing.
What's your website?
www.johnwellslaw.com.
johnwellslaw.com, and they can read more there?
It's in sad need of updating. I'm too busy fighting
okay.
the fight.
But they folks can read there and contact you if they need to.
They can. And
Okay.
For anybody in the military,
5 seconds.
get legal advice before you do anything.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim. Take care now.
All
Tim and
right.
Ed. Bye now.
Ed and I'll be back momentarily. Stay with us.